All right. Well, hello everyone. Let me add to this stream here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have Dr. Leslie Taylor back with us again, and we're talking about something very serious, suicide prevention. And I know that we've talked about many people who, surprisingly, like just me, just talking about the news, it surprised me. I know you as well out there about who has committed suicide, because you never know what they're actually feeling. I mean, from the outside, you might be thinking they're fine, but they're not. And especially just reports from the pandemic and death that people have faced, and just, loneliness. It's talked about more, which is great, because we're trying to normalize mental health and talking about it and destigmatize it. But I'm glad that there's a week kind of dedicated to this so we can really highlight it. And so Dr. Leslie Taylor is with me today, and she's a child psychologist with McGovern Medical School at UT Health Houston and UT Physicians. So Dr. Taylor, first off, have you kind of seen an increase in the amount of patients or people actually showing some symptoms or signs of suicide?
Sure. So, and it could be that those are the people who are coming in for help. That's part of the reason why they're coming in. And a lot of the youth that I speak with, they may have more kind of what we call passive ideation. So they may have thoughts of death, or they may say, man, I wish I could go to sleep and never wake up. Things like that. But those are all signs to be taken very seriously. So if your teen is saying things like that, or if your child is saying things like that, take it seriously and be very open when you're talking with them about that. Some people might say, oh, their lives aren't that bad, or I know people who have it worse. But really take it as an opportunity to have a more open dialogue and potentially get them some help.
And it's so frustrating, because say you take that big step of trying to get help, it's very hard to actually set up an appointment, or the wait list. I mean, that's the last thing you want to hear. Like, hey, here I am with these thoughts, and now I'm having to wait. So what do you recommend to those people who are in that situation?
Sure. So there's a crisis line that they can call. 988 is the National Suicide and Crisis hotline. So I would absolutely, you can text, you can call, and reach out for a warm line of support, somebody who can talk you through it. And there's also safety planning that you can do. So if you reach out to somebody at this line, they can help you with that. So letting you know that when you're having these kinds of thoughts, they're temporary, they aren't going to last forever. So let's find something for you to do to distract yourself in the meantime, so you're not so focused on the thoughts. And parents are critical to being kind of in the loop with that, so they can help kiddos stay in that distracted area.
Yeah, definitely. And this 988 number, it just got activated this summer. And so there was first like this long number, and which was a suicide prevention hotline. And now it's not even called that. It's called the Lifeline. And so, even if you're not at a stage where you have suicidal thoughts, but there's also other mental health factors, substance abuse that's so high and it's so common. Tell me have you heard of patients actually using this or saying that they have accessed 988 successfully?
Yes, and yes. So it can be really, really helpful, especially for teens. They may not feel comfortable going right to a parent when they start having some of these thoughts. So it's a great way for them to reach out. And typically when you call these kinds of folks, they've got a lot of specialized training and kind of in calming and making you feel more comfortable talking and opening up.
Yeah, definitely. And there are some things that I wanted to bring to our attention here. Specifically when it comes to things to do. So the risks we have right out here, if you could just talk about those, because I think one of the biggest ones is just like this hopelessness feeling, because you can tend to have that. And it could be, I guess, kind of taken as, oh, they're just upset about X, Y, or Z, or, kind of chalk it up to something else other than something so serious like suicide.
Sure, sure. So, what we do look for hopelessness, but there's other things that are important to consider too. So, if a kiddo is in a situation where they're being bullied a lot, or if they have some sort of like self-loathing, not liking themselves very much, we would pay attention to those things too. And then any type of self-harm. That doesn't necessarily mean someone is suicidal, but it is a risk factor. And so we'd want to ask more questions and know that's a need for help or a sign that help is needed. There's also other types of events that youth can go through that are really upsetting that they may not feel comfortable opening up about, but we know that the experience of those events can be a risk factor, just because they're hard to process on your own. So anything traumatic, any sort of death or recent loss in the family, especially if it's by suicide. And then sometimes it can be more of a financial risk at home, any kind of conflicts at home that can be really hard. And then one other one that's mentioned on here that I think we should talk about too is among teens. A lot of times teens like to experiment with substances. It's almost more normal for them to want to experiment than not.
Mhm.
But if a teen starts drinking or younger, if they start using alcohol, that creates a lot of upset in the family system, right? So they stayed out late probably because they were drinking, or maybe they come home intoxicated. That's disruption in the family, and maybe it creates a pattern where, in order to avoid those bad feelings about what happened in the family as a result of the drinking, they're doing it more. And so that creates a lot of conflict in the home, and it may put them more at risk for an attempt.
And what about people who are kind of in denial and don't necessarily address those feelings, but maybe friends and family around are concerned and they express their concern, but they just are like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. How do you kind of deal with that? Because I know that that can also be an issue that comes up.
hmm Yeah, so you can encourage them to get help, continue to encourage them to get help. But the other major thing that you can do in any situation, regardless of whether or not a person believes that they need help, is making sure that you restrict the access to any kinds of lethal means, right? So any kind of pills, knives, if you have guns at home, a lot of people are gun owners, but there's a safe way to store your guns. So making sure they don't have access to those. And then just kind of checking in and monitoring very closely what's going on in your child's life. Letting
Okay.
the school know too can be helpful.
Yes. And I think that like destigmatizing that is so, so so important. And I also want to point out, and I'm not trying to say this because you're right here, but it's so easy to talk to you and you can just, I feel like I can just tell you anything and it's like non-judgmental. And I say that to the viewers and everyone out there because you can talk to someone like Dr. Leslie Taylor and you can talk to someone, when you dial 988 and you'll be so surprised as to how the person on the other end is receiving this information. There's no judgment. It's all about trying to get to a better place, a solution so that you can get out of this, whatever mental state that you're currently in. So, I've talked to a lot of psychologists just for my reports. Also, I've also gone to therapy before several years ago, and it was just so eye-opening because I didn't even know that it was like, okay, if I tell them this, they're probably going to judge me, or they're probably going to, which is what you might get from your family members because they're thinking, what do you? When you talk to an outside third party, it's such a game changer. So I really do encourage anyone who has any mental health situation going on. It doesn't have to be as extreme as suicide, but anxiety, depression, all these things, they can lead up to something worse if not addressed. So I really encourage you to just try to reach out to someone because I can promise you it will be very surprising. So Dr. Taylor, there should be a lot of you out there.
Thank you for that. And that's part of our training too. So that's a great way to put that. That as a parent, if you hear things and you're like, I don't know what to do with this,
Right.
that's to be expected. We
Right.
went to school for a long time to know how to
Yes.
respond. So, trying to get your kiddo in front of somebody who can help is a big thing.
Yes, definitely. And even for parents, I mean, I know we talk about, for kids too, but even for parents, things can get overwhelming for whatever reason and, school and all kinds of stuff. So I encourage you to seek out help for that as well. And it's not just really finding, and one thing that I've learned just from parenting is like, if I'm not feeling okay, if I have a lot of anxiety, which I tend to get anxiety a lot sometimes, and I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not the best parent. And that's what we're all trying to be, is the best version of ourselves. So if you don't take care of you, you're not going to accomplish that goal. So that's just from my experience. And it's really helped. And I also tell people, like, anytime you have an issue, like, especially since mental health is so much in the forefront of everything, whenever you have a problem and, like, say a parent or a friend that's not involved gives you advice, that's the third party, right? Like, so it's like you need that third party to help you and to see what they're seeing, because you're so deep into it, you're so frustrated and all of that. And I say that because I had that with anxiety. I was like, nothing's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what my feelings are doing. I'm just going to cry. And, it's overwhelming. And anyway, so got off topic a little bit, but getting help is awesome. And I highly encourage it. So specifically with suicide, we also have this, which are some of the warning signs, which I think are so important. So if you want to talk about those.
Sure. And I think this is something that, it is on the mind of many researchers. What's the best way for us to know? How can we predict this? And sometimes there are signs like the ones listed here. Sometimes there's not, so it's hard to know. But definitely, if there's more talk about death, questions about death, giving things away, or maybe wanting to go around and see people to kind of say more of a final goodbye, those are big signs. Notes, online postings are huge. Making sure that you're able to monitor your child's social media is really, really important for some of these reasons. And we talked a little bit about some of those kind of direct and indirect kind of statements they might make if they're feeling suicidal. I think one of the major things to consider as well is that there can be rehearsal. So sometimes people might rehearse ways that they want to die, right? Or that they're thinking about dying, which, while terrifying to see in our loved ones, that's absolutely a cry for help. So that, have they attempted an overdose in the past? Even if it doesn't seem it was intentional or an intentional attempt, that's something to be taken very seriously. Things like that.
Definitely. And then here's more on what to do. And I did highlight this right here. I don't even know how to get this. Okay. Remaining non-judgmental, because I was talking to just about how, family members can be judgmental just because they'll already have this fixated, I guess, image of you or this is how you are. So what are you talking about? Like, how in the world, So I think that really was a big takeaway for me, but I highlighted it on my own for you all. But yeah, I mean, just like you are, like, so non-judgmental, like with everything. Like, I just wish that people had that refreshing feeling. It's just this like breath of fresh air. Like, I'm not weird. I'm not, crazy to be thinking this. Like, these are real feelings, and I want to get out of this hump. So, yeah, I mean, getting help is great, but here are some great steps if you want to go over some that you think are really important.
Yeah. And so I would absolutely say for parents, be curious first. Ask questions first and be curious. Try to hit the pause button before you say that's wrong. And some people, based on their faith, may say that that's against our religion for you to do that. And that's a whole other topic area for the family. But hold back and say, what do you mean by that? Tell me more about why you would say that. You'll be surprised about how much more information that you can get from somebody by asking questions than kind of cutting off the conversation by taking it a different direction. And then
so I was just going to say this because that is so big. Because let me tell you, there was, something had happened, and I said out loud, like, I think they were thinking about suicide. And someone in this building who's a higher up. Okay. Someone said, oh, they're just going to quit like that. And I'm like, why would you say that? Yeah. Like it's just a thought that came. And I'm like, and I'm talking about somebody else, but my point is, it's so common to think that. I think less people think and react the way you do or professionals do, well, you being a professional too, but just like common, just people who don't have any background in it or any sensitivity to it, which is unfortunate. It's not taking it seriously. It's taking it as an avenue, as an easy way out. And that really frustrates me when I hear that, because that's, you have to be in such a dark space to even feel those things and think those things. So anyway, I looked at them side-eyed.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
not right. It's just not right. It's, people have
it's a space.
Yeah.
It's a space of a lot of pain. So, and I think that's really important for everyone to consider. Some people might say, oh, they're just saying that for attention, or, they don't mean that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That part doesn't matter. The pain that they're experiencing does matter, because we know that that's the huge risk factor for going through with a plan like this.
And I think that's so important you said that these thoughts equal pain. So look at it as pain. When someone's in pain, you want to address that. So someone saying that is that they're in a deep amount of pain. So yeah, that's great. I think that's a good takeaway there. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah. They're in a lot of pain. So just like you would take anybody else who's in pain to the doctor or take them seriously, this is the same thing,
yes.
Right? So I think that's really important to take away too. And also that if we don't talk about these things, then we don't know. People think simply talking about suicide or talking about death will make it happen, when that is not the case. Having an open conversation will help in terms of prevention, right? Because you're asking all the right questions. What do you mean by that? What's happening for you? Okay, I think mom and dad are going to make sure that all the pills are locked up. You don't need sharp objects around you, at least for now. Let's keep you safe. How can we distract you from those thoughts? Let's go take a walk. Can we watch your favorite movie? What can we do?
Yeah, definitely. And then I wanted to, these are just some reminders for parents, which are really good. Taking the threat seriously is huge. And I would almost also warn the other side, Dr. Taylor, about people who may say those things. I mean, you need to take that seriously. Like if it's a cry for attention, then, this is not the route to go. Because I've also heard of that as well, which is like, kind of abusing the whole, like, the boy who cried wolf kind of thing. And it's like, you're not actually thinking that, you just want attention.
Yeah. So, anytime this stuff comes up, I mean, we, as a mental health professional, I got to put on what my parent hat might be in this situation, and what would you do? And so if your kiddo is telling you some of these things, you definitely want to restrict any of their access. Try to get them connected to a mental health professional, but it could be that there's more of an imminent risk or threat, right? Like they're saying, I don't know what I'm going to do, and it's more than you being able to monitor them and keep anything that could hurt them away from them. You may need to take them to a local ER, or you may need to take them to a psychiatric hospital for help.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about that and how serious that is, it's really great to have them evaluated to know how serious the threat is. Because that's kind of a good indicator of if this is just for attention. If you have those suspicions, that might be a good opportunity. That might be a good time to go ahead and take them in to somebody who can really formally evaluate, and then they can let you know. You lose nothing by getting a more concrete or discerning answer.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing with school, I think that's so important, because your child's at school so much, and there's so much pressure at school and competition and all of that, which is good, to some degree. But how important is using the teachers and the school officials as kind of your tools to be the eyes for your child?
Sure. And I would encourage any parent to think about the best path forward for them, right? So if you feel like you can trust the people that your child goes to school with, and if you have a connection with the school counselor or can develop one, that would be a good place to start. And so just letting them know that you're having some difficulty in the family, or, your child's having difficulty, and telling them a little bit more about that, they can connect you with some supports in the school, hopefully, or just say, hey, if this happens when you're at school, you can go see your school counselor, no questions asked. And they'll sit down with you and help you cope with your distress. And they'll contact me if they need to.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's wonderful. And I want to put this up one more time, 988. You can put it in your cell phone. It's great because it's an easy number to remember. And I really do encourage everyone, if they are having these thoughts, to dial that number, or just, call an office of a child psychologist or a psychologist to see if that's something, a route you can do. There's virtual visits as well. I think it's just so important and life-changing when you have a third party involved, to see the situation and help as best you can. Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for all this great information. As always, it's great talking to you. And thank you all for joining us. I hope that this really did help. Please share this with any friends or family. You might not know what they are going through, or they might know somebody. So if this can help one person, I know you hear this a lot probably with a lot of things, but it's worth it. So I'm glad that you all were able to join me this week, and we will see you next week for another edition of Parent to Parent. Bye.